Years of this. It's wonderful. It's 21 Summit, and this is a panel on the Manosphere and religion, because a lot of people don't know that Anthony Johnson has a controversial side to him, and every once in a while, he wants to stir people up. So he thought, why not talk about religion, right? So that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about religion. It's not only am I not ashamed to be on this stage with these men, I'm actually honored. This is my second year being at this convention, and the conversations I have with the speakers outside of the sessions are incredible. They're well-read, stimulating men. We have lots of differences, and we can talk about them in an intelligent way. Part of being a man is managing tension, managing disagreements, and thinking about things. And so I want to open up with this. Tanner, Jack, you've been in this space for a long time. Are you surprised, or how have things changed with the topic of religion coming into this? Does that surprise you? Has it always been like this? Behind the scenes, what? How do you think about it?
Okay, so Jack and I have been in this for a long time, like 10 years for me. How long for you?
At least 10.
At least 10, if not, yeah, more so. I mean, you've been published for 10 years, right?
Yeah.
No, I'm not surprised by this, because what started off, or at least kind of in the internet iteration, started off as pickup artistry, that was really just a manifestation of one version of masculinity. Because we all recognize that there's a problem with men and our relationship with masculinity in a postmodern world. It's only inevitable that that turns into, and it goes through the path that it has, which is, it went from pickup artistry to red pill to self-development to family, and then it's going to eventually get to God and religion. Because there's no way to be able to fully manifest in your physical, spiritual, or social, emotional ways without eventually getting to the spiritual element of it too. And so, not surprised at all that this is where we are. Super stoked that this is where we are, because you cannot have masculinity to its full extent without having the spiritual component of it too.
That's great. Let me flip to this side for a moment. Jeff, you're a first-time speaker. Were you surprised at the nature of some of the conversations we've been having here?
I was very surprised. I had expected, for it to be mostly pickup artist type stuff. And we've had discussions on the Holy Fathers,
We're talking the filial clause.
Yeah.
No one knows. I'm like,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
walk in and you're out there with Socrates, and right away we're like in a deep disagreement between the Western and Eastern churches. Nuts.
Yeah, and it was informative. It was enlightening even in some ways, and I've been really surprised by the intellectual depth. I think this is something that can really go somewhere.
Yeah, awesome. Ken, what do you think about this? What do you think about this becoming a topic that we're talking about more and more?
Oh, I'm telling you, the whole thing about, for me and the work that I do with men, integration is a really powerful part of this. So integrating every aspect of us as men. So our physical, our emotional, our relational, our personal, our identity, and our spiritual. I think that's been a powerful part of this whole conversation. We're bringing it all together, every aspect of manhood, and I love it.
That's great. Jack, I read Your Way of Men a while back. It was a very helpful book on brotherhood. You've just written a book that dives into religion. There's an idea that religion's feminine usually, right? That men aren't attracted to that. As you wrote this book, how'd your ideas kind of develop about masculinity and religion? How did they change, or what came into clarity that you didn't expect?
Well, I mean, religion traditionally isn't feminine. I mean, of course, priests have always been men.
Yeah.
Men create the ideals that everybody aligns underneath. And my book specifically was really about how men do create, like, what is our highest ideal, and why does that solve the problem of what we need, and how is that good for our society? And so we're setting an example, and this is the highest thing that we're reaching for. And really, the 21 convention talking about this is kind of a natural progression.
Yeah.
Now, of course, in my system, the way I'm talking about things, first you have to figure out if you can survive, and then you don't have time for like the higher ideals necessarily when you're just trying to figure out when you survive. But when you're building a higher society, well, where are we going? I mean, that's what the higher ideal really is. Where are we headed to? So that's a higher level discussion that you can have once you have all the bases covered.
That's right.
So it's a natural evolution, I think, for men generally, even like as they mature.
Yeah, that's really good. Tanner, these conversations are kind of risky, actually, right? They're risky conversations to have. You have a brand. Your brand is strong. How does this affect you to talk openly about being a Latter-day Saint?
So I know for me, there was a long time when, especially on Twitter and Instagram, where I have kind of my strongest presence, I played this game of almost surreptitiously trying to introduce principles of the gospel or doctrines that I believe in, and do it, but kind of detach God from it, because I believe that truth is universally appealing, irrespective of where it is that you try and find it. Mm-hmm. But then what I discovered for myself was that I was being kind of a hypocrite, or I was putting on a persona online that wasn't congruent with who I was in real life. And I remember very distinctly feeling like if I was going to actually, like Ken said, integrate, and I was going to become a person that was not different on Sunday or different on the internet, but I was actually who I was all the time, that I needed to be willing to openly talk about my beliefs, my doctrines, the theology and the things that we believe in. And I understand that they're unique, that a lot of people don't consider us to be Christians, that a lot of people consider it to be very odd or weird or anything else, but I kind of leaned into it. And what's the coolest thing about it is not only has it not harmed my brand, it's helped it grow, because there's integrity there that people now see, but it's also on that personal level helped me accomplish what Ken talked about. I do feel more integrated. It used to be uncomfortable for me to talk to people about my religion. And I mean, you guys know the missionaries that do like the name tags? I did that for 2 years. And there were, even after 2 years of doing that, it was still somewhat uncomfortable for me to talk about my beliefs with people that weren't like rabidly interested in it. And now I could treat it the same way that I talk about style, the same way that I talk about masculinity, the same way that I talk about family, because it's a fully integrated part of who I am. And it's made me love and worship God better than it ever would have been had I not taken that risk.
Right now, there's someone somewhere that just realized that super stylish, well-dressed missionary was Tanner Guzman. That's who that was.
You're welcome.
Well, I was talking to someone, they're like, how can you spend time with these people, right? These are terrible people, with people that we disagree. And I was thinking about, me, you, Arthur Lee Kwan, and A.J. Cortez talking. And I didn't know anything about Mormon eschatology. I never even thought about it.
Right.
And it just hadn't come up. And we're talking about that. And then AJ, sometimes pretends to be a meathead, but he's genius, right? He's so smart.
He's so bad at
it's
being a
incredible. It just starts coming out. But I was thinking, these are really good, and we're talking about our differences. It was actually really helpful. It creates compare and contrast. We start to figure out where is there correlation, where is there not correlation.
Right.
And what I was telling some people, and I want to hear what you think about this, is that evangelical culture is not just feministic, but it is nice guy culture. Mm-hmm. It is producing despicably weak men, and men look at that and say, I don't want to be evangelical if I have to give up my masculinity. If I have to choose between Christianity and masculinity, they're going to choose their nature, their body, who they are. Is that happening in the Latter-day Saints? Is it part of a broader religious movement in America? What do you think?
So one of the things that's difficult without being immersed in the church and the culture itself is to understand that there's a difference between cultural movements that happen amongst members and doctrinal consistencies or any sort of changes or anything else. I think one of the things that's kind of unique about our beliefs is that this idea of patriarchy, of the gender dimorphism, the difference between men and women, is absolutely at the core of what our theology is. One of the main things that we believe is that marriage is eternal, that if you were married by the proper authority, you will be married into eternity. You will keep your bodies after the resurrection, and you will be man and wife forever, and that is part of exaltation, is to be that way. It's not that we become this kind of amorphous couple or that we go into anything else. Like, we will be marriages for eternity. And you can't you can't do that without understanding that there's the distinction between the roles of men and women that also have their eternal nature. I think one of the things that we're seeing, sadly, in some of the more like upper middle class, kind of comfortably passive components of some church culture, is there's this discomfort of the very deep patriarchy that's baked into our doctrine. And so they try to offset it by, well, I'm the nice guy, you know, I'm the servant leader type patriarch, or yeah, I mean, I'm supposed to preside over the home, but that really means that I just, you know, call on which of our kids is supposed to say the family prayer in the morning or at dinner, and it's not godly. And it's also not doctrinally being upheld. It's not being taught by the prophet or by the apostles. It's not taught in our scriptures, but there's a cultural component to it. And I'm very grateful to see more and more men who are recognizing the problems with that and are starting to push back against it. And again, not push back the doctrine, maintain and declare the doctrine, but push back against the cultural change that sadly some of our members are trying to promote.
Jack, a lot of men reach out to you. I know they do because of your book. And how do you introduce the spiritual side of the conversation as you're trying to direct people, trying to help them figure out how to be a man?
Some guys come to me for that, and then some guys don't. And so it just depends. I don't have a horse in that particular race. I'm not selling them anything. I'm not trying to get them to join a church. I'm not trying to do anything like that. So I don't have to introduce that in a particular way. I mean, obviously, you can talk about, because I talk about big concepts more than anything. It's not specific to one group. I care about masculinity and freedom and whatever we can agree on to get there, you know, are my most important things. So that's what I really care about. But as far as introducing, I think in the way that probably Ken does, a little bit more when you talk about, you know, higher ideals and who do you actually want to be and what's the most important thing, and integrating all that into your personal development. And because, you know, obviously guys need to think about that stuff, like, well, where are you going, what are you trying to do, you know? And that's what, you know, I think religion really represents to me. Or, you know, spirituality is such a stupid word.
I know.
It doesn't mean
I'm trying to figure
like,
out. I'm trying to navigate all this terminology here.
Right? It's just a higher, you know, it's a higher idealism is kind of what I call it.
Okay. Well, Ken. So Ken, how does you work with men? You're a Christian. You don't hide that you're a Christian at all.
I'm a Christian man. I like Jesus.
Yeah. How does religion, how does Christianity, how does it impact how you counsel and help men as a therapist and as a brother and father?
I think even, as the guys were talking over here, one of the big things that came to mind was the whole idea of Platonic dualism. And Michael, you'll talk about Gnosticism and all that. So the dualism is that there's a higher plane, lower plane, and it's really kind of a thought that is in Western thought, is the whole thing of that the higher plane is spiritual and intellectual, and the lower is physical, sexual. And it's I totally believe that is bullshit, and that the integration, back to the integration of our sexuality and our physicality with everything. And I think that's what really came with the incarnation of Christ, where he came and became a man. He became physical, and he became a man he was a sexual being, which it feels like it's like you can't say that Jesus had morning wood.
Soundbite.
How could you say that?
Well, thanks for being on the Red
Right?
Man Group. It's been a good show.
Right?
We've made friends.
I mean, how do you say this? That he took a shit? That he pissed? Right? It
had a body.
feels
He's a man.
sacrilegious.
Yeah.
Feels sacrilegious to say that.
It's because they think he's an androgynous spirit. They de-sex Jesus.
Exactly.
If you believe in an Orthodox understanding of the resurrection, Jesus is still a man today, right? And he has to be 100% God, 100% humanity, hypostatic union is what they call it in theological terms. So he really was a man. We don't believe that. What you realize, there is all of America is a religion, right? It's androgynous Gnosticism is really where we've kind of got to. And you kept pushing that hard in your talk over in 21.
I did.
How is your experience with your son and speaking at events like this and getting active? How has that brought that even further in view?
So yeah, I mean, I'm an Orthodox Christian. So our view of the incarnation informs, almost all of the theology. Irenaeus said that like all errors of theology really come from errors in the Trinity, understanding of the Trinity. And we believe that the incarnation built a bridge. Humanity is in the Trinity, and it was in the Trinity from the very beginning of time when the world was created. Which means that this bodily form pre-existed creation as a form. And Jesus is in the Trinity, and he is a man. And there's a bridge there for us. So I interpret this sort of attempt to disfigure the body of men, boys, turn them into girls, and likewise girls into boys, is an attempt to sever this relationship of human beings to the Trinity. It's a heresy of the lowest and most disturbing kind, the kind that we saw in the high places in the Exodus with the sacrifice of children and the mutilation of children. It's very serious, and it is theological. It is spiritual. It is not just some empty postmodern ideology.
Yeah, on the money. Very, very good.
Well, I think that even kind of correlates with what Ken was saying, because as we have to de-sex Christ, that also means that we have to not only make him so that we don't think about bodily functions or sexual drive. Like I think we tend to think about sexuality as something that's separate from masculinity or femininity, and there are different manifestations of it. But by de-sexing Christ in that way, they've also done it on the other side of making him more androgynous.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so it's a de-sexing in both directions. And then somehow it becomes this new morality of androgyny. And if we hadn't let the reins go on that as far as a broader Christian culture, even if we had maintained this like Aslan from C.S. Lewis version of Christ, that he's the embodiment of both, or if we were able to better understand that Jesus Christ was not a repentance of Jehovah, but that it's like Jack talks about, it's kind of the integration of this tripartite God, and that they're two different sides. To pull from another religious thing, it's a yin and a yang. You've got the Jehovah of the Old Testament and the Jesus Christ of the New Testament, and the second coming is going to be him in both of these forms. If we could look at Christ that way, we would see androgyny for the abomination that it is. Mm-hmm. But because we pervert him and we turn him into this one-dimensional cartoon character of a God that we've created in our own image, then of course we're going to worship him by androgynizing ourselves. And it's heresy.
Mm. I claim that we've actually made a transgender Jesus.
Yeah.
Well, it's the gentle Jesus, meek and mild.
Right. That he actually came to bring peace and not a sword, which is the opposite of what he told us.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
If you look at the sort of words that are often used, at least in Texas evangelical churches, to describe Jesus, they just line them up on one side, and then line up what you'd say about a manly man. Jesus is described essentially as a woman. The best you could get is a romance novel hero. Right? And they've really remade Jesus into a woman. And the kinds of songs they sing to Jesus are essentially love songs that you'd sing, it's it's essentially transgender Christianity that's going on. It's very disturbing.
Yeah, I was since Ken's gone for it. What?
You open the floodgates, Ken.
Dude, why not? Right. Well, I was listening to a worship song, and over and over, they wanted me to sing "I Want You Inside Me," and I was like, "Look, dude, I can't do it. I can't. Like I'm trying to play along, but I can't sing this. Okay?
Yeah.
Like I can't sing this way. I'm sorry, And people think that that's innocent, but it is a feature of our culture that's bleeding into everything.
Definitely.
And I've thought about this. Thought about sitting on stages with men you disagree with. And part of the problem is people don't understand the enemy, right? We have a common enemy, a lot of us right now. Yep. And so I think the concept of allies and co-belligerents is helpful. Mm-hmm. It's like, look, we don't agree on everything, but you are firing at that dude, and that guy wants to destroy us. And there is a secular religion its secularness is disappearing. And we see that with governors that are like calling COVID like a sacrament. You're my apostles. You're going to go out there and do this stuff. Like everything's disappearing. The lie is becoming our
Yeah, the
face.
trappings of secularism.
That's right. It's disappearing. Someone asked me what I thought was happening, and I said, I think materialism's dying. I think it's dying out. Like when I see materialism, I'm talking literally about naturalistic materialism, all right, where people are seeing the need for the spiritual. So women want everyone to get along, and that's why when you ordain women in churches, they go heretical, like within just a couple decades.
Hear, hear.
Because they won't push